made the same journey but for different reasons. And here we are in these strange lands that we now call home. Yes, we share so much of the same history and culture, but in so many ways we're so apart and so alone. And in this new world all the time, we have this common crisis, or deaths won't die away, and social tensions on the rise. From Havana to Georgetown, oh, the danger is spreading, yeah. It's time for a common front. It's time that we realize that it's one Caribbean, one love, together in a changing world. One Caribbean, one soul, reaching for a common goal. Yeah, one Caribbean, one heart, together in a changing world. One Caribbean, one love, one heart, one soul, reaching for a common goal. One love, one heart, one soul, reaching for a common goal. We got so little on our own, but as a region we can face tomorrow. Our athletes and artists have shown the way. And from our roots of resistance and old suffering, we can rise through this new sorrow. We're much too bright in spirit not to find a better day. And in this new world all the time we have this common crisis. Our deaths won't die away and social tensions on the rise. From Havana to Georgetown, oh, the danger is spreading. It's time for a common front. It's time that we realize that it's one Caribbean, one heart, together in a changing world. Yeah, yeah. One Caribbean, one soul, reaching for a common goal. I'm saying one Caribbean, one heart, together in a changing world. One Caribbean, one love, one heart, one soul, reaching for a common goal. Say one love, one heart, one soul, reaching for a common goal. Everybody, hands across the water now. One Caribbean people, one bright, one destiny, are coming together. Hands across the border, one flag on the island. Everybody come on now. One spirit, one love, one destiny. Yeah. And for all the children, and for all the children, and for all
when it's over. When you are straight to learn tomorrow. The fact of the matter, ladies and gentlemen, that I was so disgusted with this kind of teaching. From very young, I was rebellious. In democracy, you'll agree with me. Yeah. 2 weeks ago, that if at first you don't succeed, try and try again, boy. You will succeed at last. Isn't that what I said? But they made one attempt at federating. It didn't work. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is they made one attempt. Never tried again. Never gave a chance to see, well, if, Trinidad could keep the oil and they could keep the bauxite and things. They want the oil, and Dr. William gave them a kind of fuzzy mat according to George Bush. Fuzzy mats, 1 from 10. Federation, ladies and gentlemen. People want to know why Jamaica run from the Federation. Yes, they want to know why Jamaica run away from the Federation. Jamaica have a right to speak your mind. That is my opinion. And if you believe in democracy, you'll agree with me. But they didn't want federation. And they know they didn't want to unite as one. Independence was at the door. Why did they speak before? This is no time to say you are federating. Oh, oi, oi, oi. Oi, oi. When they didn't get the capital site, that nearly caused big fight. When Sir Grantley Adams took up his post, that even made things worse for them. We don't want no Bajan premier. Trinidad can be capital for them. So the grumbling went on and on to a big referendum. But if they know, they didn't want federation. And they know they didn't want to unite as one. Tell the doctor you're not in favor. Don't behave like a big traitor. How the devil you mean you are federating no more? Yeah. Sorry, but no federation again. I think it's a big shame. After so much effort and energy took by everybody, right now it's only a memory. We failed miserably. Some may say we shouldn't help party, but the Jamaica West started. If they know, they didn't want federation. And they know they didn't want to unite as one. Tell the doctor you're not in favor. Don't behave like a big figure. This is no time to say you are federating no more. Are you too? You vote against it? Well, it's your powerful over there. Federation boiled down to simply this: dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. Everybody fighting for independence, singularly Trinidad too, for instance. Well, we get it too, so don't bother. But I find we should all be together, not separated as we are, because of Jamaica. If they know, they didn't want federation. And they know they didn't want to unite as one. Tell the doctor. Tell the doctor you're not in favor. Don't behave like a blasted paper. This is no time to say you are federating. No more false
The scripture says that a prophet is not without honor except in his own country, which means that in his own country a prophet gets no honor at all. We would like to put that right. We would like to honor a man, our next performer, in his own country, which is the Calypso world. The next artist is not just a Calypsonian or an entertainer. He is much, much more. A man with a message, the people's Calypsonian, the Caribbean man, the Black Stallion.
Federation, the whole thing and in confusion. CARICOM and then CARIFTA, but somehow a smelling disaster. Mr. West Indian politician, I mean you went to big institution, and how come you can't unite 7 million? When a West Indian unity, I know it's very easy. If you only rap to your people and tell them like me, them is one race.
The Caribbean man.
From the same place.
The Caribbean man.
That make the same trip.
The Caribbean man.
On the same ship.
The Caribbean man.
So we must push one common intention for a better life in the region. Oh, for we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean. The Caribbean. The Caribbean. They say that the Federation was imported by from England, and they're going and form a CARIFTA with that true West Indian flavor. But since CARIFTA started running, morning, noon, and night, all I hearing is just money speech them prime ministers giving. But I say no set of money could form a unity. Now, first of all, your people need their identity to be one race.
Caribbean man.
From the same place.
The Caribbean man.
That make the same trip.
The Caribbean man.
On the same ship.
The Caribbean man.
So we must push one common intention for a better life in the region. Oh, for we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man. The Caribbean man. The
Caribbean man.
CARICOM is wasting time. The whole Caribbean gone blind. You don't know from where you're coming. You can't plan where you're going. Some want to be communist. Some want to be socialist. And one set a religion to add to the foolishness. But look, a man who don't know his history can't form no unity. How could a man who don't know his roots or his own ideology to be one race
The Caribbean man.
from the same place,
The Caribbean
back
man.
to the same trip,
The Caribbean man.
on the same ship?
The Caribbean man.
So we must push one common intention for a better life in the region. Oh, for we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man.
The Caribbean man.
The Federation done dead. Carifta going to bed. But the cult of the Rastafarian, look, spreading to the Caribbean. Rastas now in Grenada. Rastas now in St. Lucia. But to run Carifta, yes, them getting pressure. But if the Rastafari movement spreading and Carifta dying slow, then it's something them Rastas on that them politicians don't know. They say one race
The Caribbean man.
from the same place,
The Caribbean man.
back in the same trip,
The Caribbean man.
on the same
The
ship.
Caribbean man.
So we must push one common intention for a better life in the region. Oh, for we woman and we children. That must be the ambition of the Caribbean man, the Caribbean man, the Caribbean.
man.
The Black Stallion, the black man of Calypso, the Caribbean man of Calypso. Welcome. It's CARICOM Day, and as we do on this program on a daily basis, is to recognize that Guyana is part of the Caribbean, and we're not going anywhere without the Caribbean. Even with all the oil money we have, we are still part of the larger Caribbean. We come on the same ship from the same place, and we must push one common intention for we women and we children. Dr. Leroy Calise, the Black Stallion, and before that, the Mighty Sparrow Federation. The Mighty Sparrow Federation. And we started out with David Rudder, One Caribbean. A good evening, wherever you're joining us from. You are on to Politics 101, where we feature Guyana, the Caribbean, the African, the Indian, or indigenous people, Chinese, Portuguese, because we're a mixture. Guyana is part of the Caribbean. The Caribbean is made up of people coming from several places, but we all came on the same ship, from the same place. You know, sometimes we want a Caribbean without Guyana, or without Jamaica, or without St. Kitts, without Nevis, without Tobago. Sometimes we want a Guyana without its Africans, its Indians, its Portuguese, its Chinese, its Amerindians. Sometimes we've lost our way in the Caribbean because we create an abstraction and not a real place. Good evening. It's CARICOM Day. I want to thank all of you who turned up at Buxton this morning for the protest assembly organized by Kedaki Amsterdam and supported by the Working People's Alliance. It was good to see people in the public space standing up on CARICOM Day. God bless you all. Whether you're joining us from New York, North America, Europe, the wider Caribbean, welcome to Politics 101. You see, Black Stallion sang that calypso in 1979. He won his first crown. And the song, the calypso, ignited an argument, a discussion between former Prime Minister Eric Williams, Dr. Eric Williams, and Black Stallion. Because Eric Williams interpreted Stallion to be saying that the Caribbean is only made up of Africans, because Stallion said we come on the same ship from the same place, and we are one race. And it was one of the few times that Eric Williams lost a debate, because Stallion stuck to his guns. What Stallion did was to reinterpret and redefine the Caribbean reality. Of course, we all came on ships. That's the larger point the Calypsonian was making. The African came against their will on ships. The Indian, Chinese, and Portuguese came as indentured laborers on ships. The Amerindians drifted across the Americas. They came on boats, but those boats were ships. Stallion was on to something. And he used race as a metaphor. You see, we in the Caribbean and the larger African diaspora, we have always taken concepts that were meant to degrade us, and we turn them into concepts to free us. Cricket was not invented by us in the Caribbean, but we redefined the cricket. Cricket was meant to manners the Caribbean, to teach us British ways. And we turned cricket into a weapon of resistance and freedom against those who made it. And so Stalin was redefining race to say we are one culture. Because in the process, what he was doing was also redefining Caribbean unity and CARICOM. He was saying Caribbean unity and CARICOM and Caribbean integration is not politics. It's not just politics, but it's about culture. How can a man form a unity without identity? Culture. Caribbean integration is always seen as a political integration. And Stalin was saying, no, the basis of Caribbean integration is the culture and the history. One of the great calypsos, one of the great songs to come out of our Caribbean. Today we are celebrating CARICOM, Caribbean integration. And of course, if you are on social media, you will see the founding fathers of CARICOM, the politicians, Dr. Eric Williams, our own Forbes Burnham, Errol Barrow of Barbados, and Michael Manley. The four of them signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas in 1973. To put in place what we today call CARICOM. But Caribbean integration started long before 1973. Organizationally, I am placing Caribbean integration, what we call CARICOM today, way back into the 1920s, when our trade unionists created a Caribbean labor movement, that led the Caribbean struggles of the 1930s, that led to Caribbean independence. The labor movement, when Critchlow and Marichaud and others came back from a conference in 1919, they began to talk about Caribbean independence. So organizationally, I am taking CARICOM right back to the 1920s. And then in 1945, Black activists led by George Padmore and Kwame Nkrumah met in Manchester, England for a Pan-African conference, 1945. And they planned African and Caribbean independence. From Guyana, we had Dr. Peter Millard and Rusty Makonnen and others. And so the second organizational iteration of CARICOM was the Pan-African movement. So we have the labor movement, the Pan-African movement. And then in 1958, we had the Federation, which you heard a lot there. Sparrow song, the Federation is Calypso, the Federation. Black Stallion made reference to the Federation. And the Federation was the coming together of 10 Caribbean countries between 1958 and 1962 as one Caribbean nation, one Caribbean government. Yes, we had one Caribbean government, 1958 to 1962. Guyana was not part of it because the PPP was then in government and it did not join the Federation because it said Indians, East Indian Guyanese would become a minority in a West Indian nation, and they kept Guyana out. The Federation lasted 4 years. In 1962, Jamaica, which felt that in the Federation, all the Caribbean people will flock to Jamaica, because at that time, Jamaica had the most thriving economy in the English-speaking Caribbean. Bauxite, tourism, it had moved away from sugar. And so they held a referendum, and by a majority partisan vote, the Jamaican supporters of the JLP voted to take Jamaica out of the Federation. The PNP under Norman Manley wanted to stay in the Federation. The Jamaica Labour Party under Bustamante wanted to get out of the Federation. And in that partisan vote, the yes vote to get out of the Federation won narrowly. Jamaica left. Dr. Eric Williams said 1 from 10 leaves nothing. 1 from 10 is not. And that ended the Federation. We then move from Federation to CARIFTA, the Caribbean Free Trade Area. The dream was not abandoned. The Little Eight, as they call themselves, these were the 8 Eastern Caribbean countries. They call themselves the Little Eight. Barbados and what we now call the Small Islands. They kept the dream alive. The OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, is really the ultimate culmination, if there's something like the ultimate culmination of the Little Eight. Barbados and the Eastern Caribbean country almost became one country. And then in 1973, the Treaty of Chaguaramas, and we created CARICOM. And today we're talking about CARICOM Day, but CARICOM is the culmination of all those initiatives that I mentioned. As we think about CARICOM and we think about Caribbean integration, we must not only think about politics. There were some other founding fathers of Caribbean integration. They were our intellectuals, our academics, around something called the New World. People like George Beckford and Clive Thomas, our own Clive Thomas in Guyana. David Carey was part of the New World. Walter Rodney. These were academics who were growing up with the integration movement. And they launched the academic venture, the academic strand of Caribbean integration. So they're founding fathers in their own right. Dependence and Transformation, Beckford and Thomas. A seminal text on Caribbean integration. So we had the political founding fathers, the academic founding fathers and mothers. And then we had the cultural integration. The University of the West Indies, 1948. The Caribbean cricket team, West Indies cricket team, 1928. The cultural movement, Black Stallion and Chalk Dust and the Mighty Duke and other Calypsonians, Short from Antigua, our own King Fighter and Canary, Caribbean artists singing for the Caribbean. And then came 1950, the early 1950s, the birth of reggae music as a Caribbean music. So, sisters and brothers, when we talk about Caribbean integration, don't just narrow it to politics. Caribbean integration is much broader and deeper. We in the Caribbean sometimes do ourselves a disservice because we minimize ourselves. You know, sometimes the political reasons, sometimes the people who talk are lazy intellectually and don't want to do what I am attempting to do here this afternoon, and to explain and to keep redefining. It's easy to say CARICOM is about 4 political leaders. Story done. You don't have any explanation to give, and so on. The thing is that younger people will pick that up and regurgitate it. When in terms of Caribbean integration, we are much more profound. The labor movement, the Pan-African movement, the decolonization movement, the political decolonization movement, the academic intellectual movement, the cultural movement, sports, cricket. Long before Usain Bolt, there was Don Quarry, the 400 meters champion from Jamaica. We have a lot to celebrate today. We have a lot to celebrate today. There's a lot to be critical, as Black Stalin did. The Rastafari movement that Stalin talked about, a Caribbean integration movement, it is the most defined cultural movement, Caribbean cultural movement of the 20th century. Its birth, 1930, in Jamaica. The coronation of Haile Selassie. And in the Black Caribbean prophetic tradition, a group of Jamaicans led by Leonard Howell interpreted the coronation of Haile Selassie as the manifestation of Garvey's prophecy that an African king shall rise. And so when they saw Selassie, they said that is Garvey's prophecy. And out of that came the Rastafari movement. And out of the Rastafari movement came reggae music. World music created by the Caribbean. The Rastafari movement, because Rasta is more than just a religion. Rasta is a movement. It has politics. It has culture. It has music. It has dance. One cannot speak about Caribbean integration without all of those strands. So when you hear me here every night, emphasizing the Caribbean, playing Caribbean music, talking about the Caribbean, I am continuing a tradition that sometimes gets lost in our conversation. I came into politics in the 1970s, what Brother Valentino called the Roaring 70s. And my first consciousness was a Caribbean consciousness. Isaac Vivian Richards red, green, and gold armband, swagging out to the middle with a bat in hand, becoming a genius unparalleled. Robert Nesta Marley, with a microphone in hand and a guitar, taking the world by storm. Get up. Stand up for your rights. Michael Holden, turning his body into poetry. Rhythm from Jamaica and the Caribbean on a cricket field. Rohan Babulal Kanai, an Indian Guyanese from Port Morant, doing what others did, but falling on his back as he deposited a cricket ball somewhere in the universe, the falling hook shot. I came into that Caribbean. A Caribbean where Walter Rodney will force our Caribbean to begin to teach African history when the politicians were fearful of African history. It was that Caribbean that my generation came into in the 1970s. That is why when I said, to understand the Caribbean and to understand us from the Caribbean, we have to go beyond narrow confines. You heard what Stalin said? All this ideology and plenty religion and identity. To understand the Caribbean, to understand the Caribbean man and woman, you have to understand a resistance against the ultimate oppression, slavery. And out of resistance came tangible things, the village movement, the labor movement, the Black Power movement. When we talk about ideology in the Caribbean, we move beyond socialism and capitalism and communism. Eric Williams wrote Capitalism and Slavery, critiquing capitalism and pointing out that Western capitalism, European capitalism, came into being on the capital, the wealth that they accumulated on the backs of the African. George Padmore wrote, Pan-Africanism or communism. He had to make a choice between European communism and African Caribbean liberation, and he chose African Caribbean liberation. We are always moving beyond boundaries. C.L.R. James captures the Caribbean in what is still the greatest sociology book and the greatest cricket book, because we are constantly moving beyond boundaries. We cannot be confined. Calypso Rose said, I am like a river overflowing its banks. You try to stop me, and I'm still finding ways to overflow. to understand us as Caribbean, you have to understand that concept. We cannot be confined. You hear them today, David Hines, all he talking about is race. David Hines is all he talking about is black people. But black people are Caribbean people. They're world people. So when I talk about black people, I'm talking about the world. When I talk about black people, I'm talking about capitalism, because slavery, the oppression of black people, created modern capitalism. When I'm talking about black people, I'm talking about capitalist racism. The fools will never understand that. I listen to them analyze me every day. My old friend Freddie Kissoon, you know, analyze me, analyze Ogunse. He has a preoccupation with us, you know. The difference between Freddie and I is that we went to university. We studied politics. We read Hobbes and Locke and Rousseau and Freud, the Western philosophers. And when Freddie was over with that, he stopped reading. When I was over with that, I then read Rodney. I read Du Bois. I read Carter G. Woodson. I read Fanon. Freddie has never read one single line from Du Bois. That is why up to today, everything he talks is about Hobbes and Rousseau and European philosophers. And they were great philosophers. But the black man, the Caribbean man and woman are also philosophers. The great C.L.R. James, W.B. Du Bois, those chaps have never read one line. That is the difference between those of us, like Ogunse and David Hines and Vincent Alexander and others, is that we continued to read. We were reading about ourselves. When we were in university, we were reading about ancient Greece. And when we left university, we took the tools from the university and began to read about Buxton and Baggersville and Denhamstel and Hope Town and Mandeville in Jamaica. We began to read about Grenada and Tobago. That is the difference between Freddie Kissoon and a Takumo Ogunse or a David Hines. We continued to study ourselves. So when we talk about African, we're not talking about some narrow little thing. Slavery, as Dr. Eric Williams said, is what produced European wealth. That is the Caribbean we are celebrating today. That is the Caribbean. Freddie Kissoon listened to Paul Anka and Humperdinck. David Hines went beyond Paul Anka and Humperdinck and listened to Sam Cooke and Bob Marley and Black Stallion and the Mighty Sparrow. We went beyond European so-called classics. And we listen to the black and brown classics, the blues, jazz, reggae, calypso, zouk. And so when we speak today, when we analyze politics today, it's not just party politics. It's a politics that's grounded in humanity, grounded in suffering and resistance to suffering. We sat at the feet of Guyana and Burnham. For all their faults, with all their faults, and they were not faultless, they taught us a politics of self-definition. That is what is difference between us and those who are now in control of the PPP. We didn't vote for Jagan, but we didn't exclude Jagan. Even when Jagan excluded the Caribbean, we did not exclude Jagan because our politics was one that was grounded in culture. Today, they're trying to wipe African culture and the African personality from the face and the veins of Guyana. But armed with history, armed with a body of thought and action, armed with a praxis, we shall beat them back as we do here every night and anger them. European capitalism invented slavery to kill the black man while exploiting his labor. Guyana's 21st century racial domination, economics and politics seeks to reduce the black man to the back of the line while exploiting the wealth that he and she created. The oil at the bottom of the ocean, that oil, mixed up in that oil are the bones of the African, crushed as they came across the Middle Passage. Some jumped into the ocean as an act of freedom. Some were thrown there when they died of hunger, when they died of oppression. The bones of the African are mixed with the oil that we are accumulating wealth from today. But the African is cut off from the accumulation of the wealth that comes from the bones and the oil. They say Guyana has a growth rate of 30%. The economic growth rate of the African is 6 to 7%. They don't want us to talk about that. All David Hines talk about is race. No! Race is the prism through which I'm talking about the inhumanity against Amerindians, Africans in Guyana. They try to sway the minds of Africans by telling them don't think about race. When they tell young Africans don't think about race, they're saying don't think about your history, because race answers the question, why are you bringing these dark-skinned people to work for nothing on your plantation? And the answer was because they're inferior. That is race. And when you say that young black people ought not to think about race, you're telling them not to think about the origins of their condition today. On this CARICOM Day, I renew the notice you all will not succeed. They say in 2025 at the election, David Hines went to war, and when he looked back, there were no soldiers. What do they know of African soldiers? Every day when I look back, the ancestors are there. Black Stalin said, the more they kill, the more they see African coming. We shall not be killed. Martin Carter said, I come from the nigger yard of yesterday, and to the world of tomorrow I turn with my strength. We are strong. Sometimes we play weak. Sometimes we allow people to weakness. But strength is beyond the political act. On this CARICOM Day, we are here, and we're not going anywhere. We shall use the memory of Africa to plant ourselves again and again in this Guyana, this Caribbean. Good evening, and welcome to Politics 101. Man shall not live by bread alone. We shall not be freed by elections and electoral politics alone. Get that in your heads. Elections and electoral politics are but one weapon in our arsenal. You see, Guyana is not a straightforward place. I hear people talk about our Guyanese democracy. We have had 69 years of electoral politics. We had our first election, dual suffrage, in 1953, but that was extinguished after 133 days. And we did not have elections again until 1957. I'm pivoting now to elections. And between 1957 and 2026, that's 69 years. Democracy, Western democracy, assumes that you change governments periodically, frequently. Between 1957 and 2026, 69 years, we have changed government 4 times. 4 times. All you ever think about, you all know it. You all know it, but part of conversation is what you know sometimes becomes amplified in a conversation. It sometimes becomes evident in a way that when you are thinking about it in your mind, is not that evident. In 69 years, we have changed government 4 times. What democracy are you talking about? It doesn't even meet the definition of European democracy. Much more to meet the definition of Caribbean democracy. Or the democracy of resistance. 57 to 64. We changed in 64. We changed in 92. We changed in 2015. And we changed in 2020. 69 years, 4 times. What democracy are we talking about? In those 69 years, an Indian party has governed for 36 years. An African party has governed for 33 years. What democracy are we talking about on this CARICOM day? Now, it's not just the years. The African Party governed for 28 years during the Cold War. When countries like Guyana could not do as they please. The Indian Party governed for 7 years during the Cold War. The Cold War came to an end in the late 80s. A new world order. The Indian Party is governing when we find new wealth. The African Party governed bauxite, on the bauxite, and sugar. The African Party governed when sugar was on its way out. The Indian Party is governing when oil is on its way in. Sisters and brothers, we got to tear this thing open to understand. Take this message to the 4 corners of Guyana, targeted first and foremost to the African youth, who some of whom are being confused, and the Amerindian youth, and the East Indian youth, and the Guyanese youth. The Indian Party is governing with oil. The African Party governed with a declining sugar economy. The Indian Party is governing with a lucrative petro economy. Wealth. The Indian elite is accumulating wealth beyond our wildest dreams. They're giving some money. They just give out $85,000 per parent. A little change. Money by itself is not wealth. $1.6 trillion because they just come for some more. So it can't be beyond 1.558. It's now $1.6 trillion in 1 year. Less than 10% of that finds its way in the African and the Caribbean and the Amerindian communities. Less than 10% of that. Less than 10%. Less than 10%. And you're telling me about some democracy? You see, they don't want me, they don't want us to talk about Africans. Because to talk about Africans is to talk about the denial, about the highway robbery. Do I not know that that East Indians are poor? I know that. I live in Guyana. I know East Indians are poor. I know they are poor East Indians. And I must talk about that. But sometimes you have to choose what to highlight. Every person now is, and they have some black leaders, they get us now become a communist, you know. It's about class. Class. Oh, the problem in Guyana is class. The problem in Guyana is class fused with race and gender. That's the problem in Guyana. The PPP wants us to talk about class when they have abandoned class politics. And they want to get people like me and you and others to chat class politics while they are accumulating wealth as a class of a particular race. One of the easiest thing in Guyana today is if you are Indian elite, one of the easiest thing in Guyana is for you to accumulate wealth. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. The system of European racial accumulation of wealth, starting with slavery, coming right through to independence, that system was never dismantled. And what the Indian elite around the PPP have done is that they have taken that system that Eric Williams talked about in capitalism and slavery, and that Rodney talked about in how Europe underdeveloped Africa. They've taken that system and they're using it now to accumulate indigenous local wealth. You see, as I said on this program before, I know Exxon robbing us, but so did Bookers, and so did Alcan. I know. But today, it's not just Exxon robbing us. It's our PPP government robbing us too. That's the difference. Back under the PNC, they rigged the election. They engage in assassinations. political assassinations. They were intolerant of dissent. What they didn't do was to economically rob Guyanese. There was nothing to rob Guyanese. The little they got, they engaged in economic nation building. The PPP today, like the PNC, they're engaging in rigging. They're engaging in assassination and economic violence, robbing us blind. You see, I have to talk the truth of then to talk the truth of now. Part of our problem with the PPP is that some of our politicians don't want to talk the truth of then. So they can't effectively talk about the truth of now. You see, the PNC rigged the election because they reasoned that Indians control the economy and Africans must control the politics. So in order to do it, you got to rig. The PPP of today reason that in order to control the wealth that is coming from oil, you have to control the politics. And just as the PNC back then didn't have a majority, the PPP today don't have a majority. So what they have to do? Rig. They rig the politics. They're rigging the economics. They're rigging the culture. And they want me to talk about the rigging of the 1970s and the 1980s. And not talk about the rigging of today. They want me to talk about what the Granada television came in 1968 and found rigging in Guyana. And they don't want me to talk about Order 60 in 2020 that exposed the wholesale rigging of the PPP. They're telling, imagine, people are PPP, but they're giving APNU advice. How you going to give your opponent advice? Anytime you're giving your opponent advice is ram goat advice. Your formula to win is to preach race to Indian people, to keep them politically in line, to buy Amerindian votes, and to rig a GCOM. That's your formula to win. That's the PPP's formula. And you're telling PNC, if you want to win, go after crossover votes. Go to hell. I can say it. And I will say it. Because I belong to an independent party. I wish the PPP were to say it. The PNC were to say it. I wish the PNC were to say it as I am saying it. Go to hell. You rigging, you buying vote, and you preaching race to your constituency and telling me not to preach race to my constituency. When I preach race to my constituency, I'm preaching the truth. The burden to free Guyana of ethnic voting has to be the burden of all races. It mustn't be the burden just of Africans. For us to get beyond racial voting, all races must split up their votes. If Africans alone split up their votes, and Amerindians and East Indians don't split up their vote, we still doing racial voting. East Indians doing racial voting. You think Africans and Amerindians are jackasses, encouraging them to split up their vote, and some well-meaning Indian people celebrating it as an advance. While Indian people are not splitting their votes. I shall not stop. We shall not stop. African people got to recover their sense. Black Stallion said, wait, Dorothy, wait. My fans and them asked me to sing and write about smut. About this Dorothy woman. Oh, she come in the band and she whining and carrying on. And I tell them, until Mr. Divider divide the bread equally, wait, Dorothy, wait. You come to Africans and tell them, we must get rid of and we must get rid of racial voting. And we Africans must say to them, until Indian people split up their vote between PPP, WIN, APNU, and whoever else, wait, Dorothy, wait. Politics, you have to be tough about your own survival. There are two ways of interpreting what happened at the last election. One way is that black people were tired and vexed with the APNU. That's one interpretation, and it's a correct interpretation. They were tired and vexed with the APNU because they felt that APNU was playing politics. 1/3 of them stay home, 1/3 vote for WIN, 1/3 vote for the APNU. That's one interpretation. The other interpretation is that black people did not politically manage their frustrations. They allowed their frustration to run amok. I am sure Indian people are frustrated with the PPP. But what they did was, in the political context of Guyana, they managed their frustration. They did not allow their frustration to run amok. That's the other interpretation of what happened in 2025. There are two interpretations. And we are sometimes satisfied with one interpretation. And we are spinning it as though it's some positive thing. It may be positive intent, but within the context of political contestation, it was a negative outcome. Because what it did, what might have been a noble intent, an intent born of frustration. Natural. Frustration is a natural thing. An intent born of frustration had an outcome of more frustration. We are now 29 seats instead of 33 and 34. We are now divided, fighting each other. The energies to fight the PPP at GCOM and to fight the role of the chairperson is now put into fighting one another, fighting APNU on the three commissioners. Not on dismantling GCOM, but dismantling three commissioners. That is the outcome of what may have started as good intention born of frustration. Energy, look where the energy is. Look where the energy is. The energy is not in a universal opposition struggle on the streets of Guyana to demonstrate to the world our frustrations. Neither WIN nor APNU has gone to the streets since the election. Black people were frustrated with Norton for not going on the streets correctly, so I agree with them. I think it's a signal mistake of Aubrey Norton. And black people punished him for that. But has Mohammed gone to the streets? No. You jump out the frying pan into the fire. Norton and Nigel Hughes, they're both men that I admire. And I wanted them to form a coalition. I invited them to Buxton on behalf of the 1st of August movement. I stood in between them and held their hands. My understanding of Guyana politics taught me that it was coalition time. Nigel Hughes and his party signaled that Norton was not electable. Norton and his party said, for us in the PNC, he's the presidential candidate, so they say he's electable. The clash. The clash. Nigel Hughes demanded 85%. Norton said, I'm going to give you 30%. The clash. In the end, there was no unity. Norton ended up with 12 seats. Nigel Hughes ended up with 0 seats. I love Nigel. I'm going to say something here tonight that I may not have said publicly before. Nigel was my candidate for the presidential candidate. He was my preference. Norton, as the leader of the largest party, had a right to put himself up. His party had a right to put him up. Nigel Hughes, coming from a small party, could not and ought not to have negotiated as a party. If you negotiate as a small party, you can't have the top spot. And so Nigel's mistake was to negotiate as party. I'm saying what I never said before. If you negotiate in a party, then Norton had to be the candidate. Not Niger. But if you negotiated beyond party, if you look at the black faces of Africans, and you look at the brown faces of Amerindians, if you look at that black oil coming out of the bottom of the ocean mixed with the bones of Africans, if you look at the PPP's fusion of cultural elites with political elites and economic elites, if you look at that and you negotiated from that broad praxis that you had to beat back Indian elite domination, that you had to secure some of the proceeds of oil for black people and Amerindian people, then we could have ended up with Nigel Hughes as the top candidate and the PNC as the top party with the other representatives. But Nigel negotiated as AFC, a quote-unquote small party, demanding from Norton with a big party can't work. So you have to move the negotiations from party. And you have to take the negotiations to the point where you're answering the question, who controls the wealth in the next 40 years, 50 years? If Nigel had moved the negotiations there, I think Norton would have relented. I know Norton suggested others other than himself as a presidential candidate. I don't have permission to call the names, but Norton was not wedded to himself. I know that. At least two other people he would have surrendered the presidential candidacy to. He was not wedded to it. But you couldn't go to him with your party not electorally big and demand the presidential candidates from him with his party electorally big. You have to move the basis of the negotiation from party. You have to move beyond party. People ask me why it was so easy for the WPA to stay with the APNU in the elections. Did we have misgivings with Norton? Yes. Yes, we did and we still do. But we moved the praxis from Norton and the PNC, and we moved it to the survival of black people, Amerindian people. We moved it to who controls the wealth. And so despite our misgivings with Norton and the PNC, we stayed with the coalition. We stayed with the PNC. We stayed with APNU. Because we move it beyond PNC and Norton. Like the AFC We were disappointed with the treatment between 2015 and 2020. They treated us badly. The Granger administration treated the WPA badly. After all the work that the WPA did in bringing into being APNU, which was the backbone of APNU, of the APNU-FC coalition, they treated us badly. But because our eyes moved beyond the PNC, beyond Granger, beyond Norton, and we say, what's going to happen to black people in this country in the next 40 years? We had to win this election in order to keep afloat the survival of black people. And so we couldn't confine ourselves to our heart under Granger and to our misgivings of PNC and Norton. We saw the demons at the gate. And we felt we had to win the election. And the best way to win the election was for us to stay together. And we stayed together, and some people still not giving us credit for being the only established party. When PNC members were leaving PNC, WPA stayed with PNC. If Nigel Hughes and the AFC had adopted the WPA stance, we might have been in government today. Nigel Hughes might have been president. You see, you have to understand sociology in order to understand politics. Granger came from nowhere. Nobody didn't know about Granger. But when he came onto the political scene, he came on at a time when the basis for a certain kind of politics was laid. Granger didn't build APNU. He had nothing to do with it. APNU was built by the WPA and the PNC. In particular, on the PNC side, Robert Corbin, Lance Scarberry, Basil Williams, they were the ones who believed in APNU. Rupert Rupnarine, Clive Thomas, Takumo Gonse, Desmond Trotman, on the WPA, they were the ones who believed in the APNU. And they worked for it. It wasn't Granger. But when the APNU became a reality, it opened up a new politics, it gave our people hope that we could win an election. And Granger came into that. The road was prepared, the wicket was prepared for him. And what Granger brought, he brought a lot of things. But Granger brought the fact that he was a soldier. And we were in a fight. And the imagery of a soldier leading black people, powerful. And Granger grew in stature, came to power as a soldier. He didn't govern enough as a soldier, but he came to power as a soldier. And when I said he didn't govern enough as a soldier, I'm not saying he didn't do positive things. He did. He did a lot of positive things. But he and his soldier boys missed the beat. They did not use the black prophetic tradition to looking to the future. They felt people like me, people like us in the WPA were nuisances. We were a nuisance. And didn't understand that in politics there are roles. But we didn't allow that. We didn't allow that to make us abandon ship. We made no demands on Norton. Because we looked at the big picture. And my friend Nigel, I'm saying it for the first time, Nigel was my preference to the presidential candidate. But my preference was not based on a sense of entitlement. I didn't believe Nigel was entitled to be presidential candidate. He was not entitled, nor was Norton entitled. Norton's entitlement came from the fact that he led the big party. Beyond that, Norton had no other entitlement. Nigel had no other entitlement. He came from the middle class. But that did not entitle him. Nigel Hughes was my preference through a process of self-interrogation, through a process of understanding the realities of the country and oil and what that meant and why we had to get power or get close to power. I wish we didn't have to have a presidential candidate, but the system said we had to. And so as we in the WPA thought about the process, because we felt this thing had to be a process, my preference, if the process had gone to its logical conclusion, my preference would have been Nigel. But the process didn't go to its logical conclusion. And so Norton became the presidential candidate by default. Don't beat him up for that. Nigel and the AFC abandoned ship. And we all suffered because of it. On this CARICOM day, we are laying it out. Because nobody's going to tell me, nobody's going to tell the WPA that you don't have a role to play in this country. Nobody's going to tell us that. Walter Rodney taught us that you deal with the question of racial identity today so that tomorrow, when it's time to deal with the question of national identity, you would have settled the problem of racial identity, the issue of racial identity, sorry. You can't have national identity without racial identity. What nonsense are you talking about? And the problem with the political elites, the black political elites, in the PNC and outside the PNC, is that they want national identity without racial identity. And they allow people to beat them into that position. That was not Burnham's position. Burnham did not believe in national identity outside of racial identity. That was not Burnham's ideology. But a lot of the comrades around the PNC, not all of them, but a lot of them, believe in national identity without racial and ethnic identity. It's a fatal flaw. It's a fatal flaw that hurt us. The PPP may be into capitalism. They are into capitalism. They are into controlism. They are into thiefism. But all of that is grounded in a sense of Indian identity. What does Ravi Dev and Orphan Ali and the Indian business class and I'm going to say it now, and some of you all will vex with me, but I say it. And Azadin Mohammed, who is now recovering from the cabal, what do they have in common? Their Indianness. Let me repeat it. What does Ravi Dev from the cultural elite, Irfan Ali and Jagdeo from the political elite, all them Indian businessmen, including Azadin Mohammed, what do they have in common? Their Indianness. What does Nigel Hughes from the ASC, Aubrey Norton from the PNC, David Hines from the WPA, Amanza Walton from the FGM, Simona Brooms from Liberty, what do we have in common? Our Africanness. But what do we deny? Our Africanness. That's why we are where we are today electorally. I'm saying it back today. They got flaws on the Indian side. When the Americans say we want Azadin, the PPP loosey foot. That's what's playing out there. In order to save the political kingdom, they loosey foot. So they have their own problems on the Indian side. They do. What does Ravi Dev, Vindi Prasad, the cultural elites, religion, culture, Hinduism, Bara Jagdeo and Orphan Ali, the Indian business class in Guyana and out of Guyana, and the president of India, Modi, when he come to Guyana, you all remember what he said? What do they have in common? Their Indianness. And they're using their Indianness in order to consolidate power in a multi-ethnic society in which no single race should consolidate power. Let me repeat it. What does Nigel Hughes and David Patterson and Aubrey Norton and Amanza and Simona and David Hines and Takumo Gunse and Eric Phillips and Vincent Alexander, the cultural elites. And the few black businessmen that we have around. What do we all have in common? Our Africanness. But we have not learned how to leverage our Africanness for African survival in Guyana. That is why we lag behind. Even Amerindians, for as we push them, isolate them as isolated as Amerindians are. They have learned to leverage their Amerindianness. I sat in that parliament and listened to Amerindians from the PPP, Amerindians from WIN, Amerindians from the APNU. They're quarreling with each other, but you know what they're quarreling about? How much more for Amerindians? And when I got up and talked about reparations, an international decade of the people of Africans, the Africans and the PPP mauled me or attempted to do so. The Africans from WIN remained silent. There were some noises from the Africans on my side in the APNU, but the Africans from WIN were silent. The Africans from the PPP were battering me. And like I said, I got some solidarity from the Africans from the APNU, but none of them got up after me and repeated what I said. But they gave me some solidarity. But the Amerindians were quarreling over how much more for Amerindians. I'm laying it all black today. On this CARICOM day, we are telling the truth. Whether the truth will set us free, I don't know. But we got pulled ourselves together in the African community, both at the level, but at the level of leadership and at the level of followership. I have come to grips with the mainly African young people who voted for WIN. I've come to grips with it because I think the more you study, the more you listen to young people, you understand that they got there through a logic. It was a rational vote. It wasn't irrational. It was a rational vote. Those who stayed home, they weren't irrational. They made rational decisions. And that's one story. But like I said, the second story is that in politics, rational decisions can lead to irrational outcome. And that's the second story. Rational decisions, irrational outcome. We are weaker today, economically, politically, than we were before the 2025 election. As Africans, we're weaker. That's an undeniable fact. You can do good things, but you don't always have the control of the outcome of good things. I didn't have to read books to know that the luck that Mohammed got at the election, he would not use it for African causes. I didn't have to read any book. He doesn't have to. He didn't go looking for black people. Black people went looking for him. Rationally. They weren't being irrational. So he's under no pressure to repay them. He didn't go and beg them for their votes. They went and offered him their votes. So he's under no obligation to repay them. Be talking tonight. Be talking tonight. Brother Azadin didn't go and beg black people for their votes or Amerindians. They went and offered him their votes. In such a scenario, the person you offer your vote has no obligation to look after your causes. You didn't bargain. You didn't say, here, I got some votes. And he didn't say, here are my promises, and you all bargain, and out of that bargain came the electoral results. Black people going to say, look, my vote. Some of our Indians going to say, look, my vote. So the brother is under no obligation. That's how politics work. Well, I'm at it. You all see that explosive thing that Mohammed exposed? The farm, the ranch that orphan own. Here is the truth. They get plenty of that in Guyana. They have plenty of those things among the economic, political, and cultural elites. Black people, you know, I heard this weekend that, you know, you all know there is a vacancy for the Vice Chancellor of UG. And I understand that among the people who have applied to be the Vice Chancellor are some of the Indianist elites, the Indianist cultural elites. See, UG is seen as a bastion for black people. And so they run UG down. And they run it down to the ground. And now they want somebody to lead it. And some of the Indian cultural elites, I'm calling their name because I don't have permission to do it, although it's public knowledge. Some of the Indian cultural elites have applied to lead UG. And black people, you all, like I said, I love what Azadin is doing. Exposing the corruption in the PPP. But there is corruption beyond the ranches and the big houses. There is the attempt to control every institution in Guyana. But that's not Azadin's fight. Azadin's fight is not whether the Indian cultural elites want to take over UG. They're an E-fight. It's not Azadin's fight that, you know, our growth rate is 30-something, 40-something%, but the African economic growth rate is 7% or 8%. That ain't Azadin's fight. He never promised you all that because he didn't ask you all for your all vote. That the PPP take away a miserly $100 million from apology while it giving millions and millions of dollars to Indian organization. That's not Azuddin fight. That African young men continue to be gunned down, harassed by the police. I last count. We got buried with dead. That's not Azuddin's fight. He didn't promise you all that. Azuddin is pursuing his fight. And in doing so, he's contributing. Because when he exposed the corruption, he is showing us where the dead bodies are. Because he was part of them. So he know where the ranch there. He know where the money hide. And so he's contributing, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to the fight for the supporters, his supporters, the people who voted for him, he ain't there. You all got to fall back on us. So the uncomfortable situation is that African people give their electoral support to one party, but expect another party to defend them against the police and defend them culturally and so on. It's a horrible situation to be in, but that's the reality of our politics, and we have to work with what we have. I was making the point. I know APNU people contribute to a lot of charitable cause in the Black community. I do it in my own community. But I cannot go public with it. Azuddin could go public with his charity because he's outside of the community. He's not subject to the cultural and moral rules of the community. That when you give people something that you don't want to talk about it. We Black people, me and Terence Campbell, are subjected to that moral. Azuddin is not subjected to that moral because he's outside the community. And what he gets from Black people is what is called the gratefulness factor. That Black people are grateful that somebody from outside the community come and help them. And so he can go public with that. There is the gratefulness factor that people like Terence Campbell or myself or Aubrey Norton or Black leaders are helping. They're grateful to us. But that gratefulness comes within the context that you don't shame them. You don't take their story and go and give people things and then go and talk about it. That's it. That's the political reality that we live in. And the vultures, the Freddie Kissoons, and Freddie's part of what is now the propaganda elite. Their thing is to promote Ali and the PPP, not as an end in itself. But in promoting Ali, they are promoting Indian domination. So Ali, when you hear Freddie talk, everybody come to ask him, Ali's a transformational leader. Well, Freddie know the meaning of transformational. And he know Ali may be many things. He may have a big ranch, he may have a PhD and so on, but he's not transformational. And Freddie knows that. But Freddie's promoting him as transformational, as a means towards consolidating African domination. Indian domination, sorry. Indian domination. Indian domination. Somebody like Freddie doesn't care much about Indian culture. In fact, Ravi Devan them used to cuss that he's not Indian. He doesn't. He's not deeply embedded in Hindu culture and all those things. Freddie is a Western Indian. He discuss Rupert Rupnarayan and tell them that they're Indo-Saxon, but Freddie's Indo-Saxon too. But because he's a political coward, he hides under power. When the PNC up no at power, he hide under that. And now he sees what Indians are doing, and they're seeking to control Guyana, and he hides under that, and he's working for that. He's not afraid. He's not no Indianist, Hindu. He don't think in those ways. But he's promoting it. And that is what we are up against on the Indian side. That Indians like Freddie Kisunu is not PPP. Freddie's dislike for the PPP is probably deeper than some black people. But he has made peace with the PPP. Not because he likes them, but because he sees where they're drifting and what Guyana is going to be in the next 30, 40 years. And he don't want Indian people to say that he didn't contribute to it. And so he's contributing to it through propaganda. And so he sees people like myself and Vincent Alexander and Ogunse and those of us who he goes after. He sees us as standing at the door to prevent black people from being herded back into the plantation. He knows that. He's not a fool. And so he's trying to diminish us in the eyes of African people, because there is this fault line, you know, in the thinking of other races, that black people are messed up people. You know, they may acknowledge that we have talents and so on, but that slavery messed me up. It's a kind of natural reaction, natural cultural reaction to black people by other ethnic groups and even by some black people, that slavery messes us up and that we are more gullible than other ethnic groups. It's a settled cultural thinking. And sometimes we bear it out because we behave as though we are gullible. You see, they want the white people to lock up Muhammad. People like Freddie, they want the white people to lock up Muhammad. But at the same time, they're using Muhammad to keep black people. Their hope is that Muhammad will control black people and that will keep black people divided. So on the one hand, they want to lock you up. But on the other hand, they want you to do a certain kind of dirty work. So Freddie said, I'm not going on the program because I don't want to talk about Muhammad. I'm not going on Freddie program because I'm not going there to legitimize Freddie's agenda. Freddie, every time somebody from the opposition goes on Freddie's program, he harasses them, he disrespects them. And anybody from the Indian cultural elite, from the PPP, the political elite, the business people, they go, he treats them with respect. And so I'm not going on Freddie program to legitimize that nonsense. You know, if I go on Freddie program, I'll box him politically because he needs some slaps, some political slaps. And if I go there, that's what I'm going to do. And I could do it because he's not more of a bully than me. He's a bully. He's a political bully when he's by himself. And if I go there on his program, I will box him politically. And he can't box me back. So Freddie, in case you're wondering why I'm not coming from me, because I don't want to slap your ass politically. You're too bright and sensible to to allow yourself to become a doormat for people who see you as a last class Indian. You remember when they call you a black and ugly Indian chap? The same people you're promoting now, they call you black and ugly. But because you're such a coward, you're allowing yourself to be used as a doormat. And if I come on your program, I will slap you politically for your cowardice. I don't mind Leonard Craig interviewing me. I don't mind. Leno Leno is a good chap. But Leno find himself in a place that he still want to convince it's not he alone get gone there. That's some critical mass of African gone there with you. A critical mass and gone there with you, Leno. You gone there because they treat you bad in the AFC. They didn't make you a parliamentarian. That, you know, then they make you a minister. You make you dress up and go on Grange and swear you in, and the AFC never think you. You have legitimate grouses. And so you find yourself there, but you're a lonely chap. No critical mass of African and Ghana. There you heard Jack Dio say that Africans didn't vote for the PPP because people like me tell them the PPP is racist, and you sit down there and pretending that some African vote for the PPP. Africans vote against the PPP and the APNU. You by yourself, but you know there's salvation for you. And I don't mind Leno interviewing me, not Freddie Kissoon. Not Freddie Kissoon. You can write, Freddie Kissoon can write any number of articles and do any number of shows me and call my name from now till the end of time. I'm not coming on your program. You disrespect WPA people, my comrades, and I don't play that. You disrespect black leaders. You have contempt for black people. Something that maybe wasn't always there. But you know, have contempt. And I am not coming there to legitimize that. If I want a Tabo Mohammed air as I did tonight. Unlike you, I have spent my time in the last year thinking about what happened about at the election. Not mouthing off, thinking. These are serious times, my brothers and sisters. Serious times. I wish the times were different, but they're not different. They are what they are. And we got to fight it. Again, congratulations to those who turned out at the protest this morning in Buxton. Give thanks to activists like Kidaki and others who have taken the initiative. We're not stealing away into the dark. In the old days, we steal away into the dark to plan to overthrow slavery. And if we're stealing away into the dark today, is the plan to overthrow modern day slavery. But we're not stealing away as a form of surrender. No retreat, no surrender. No retreat, no surrender. It's not on the cards. I love you all. Sometimes I cry in the quiet of the night. But they're not tears of surrender. They're tears of resistance and liberation.